refused to babysit my sister's kids. Now the whole family says I'm selfish. I used to think saying yes was a sign of love. That being dependable meant I was a good person, a good daughter, a good sister, a good aunt. But lately, I've started to wonder if all it really made me was a doormat. It started small years ago. My sister Hannah had her first baby when I was still in college. She'd call and say things like, "Could you come over for just an hour? I need to run to the store." An hour would turn into 4, and somehow I'd end up doing dishes, folding laundry, rocking a crying baby while she scrolled on her phone. Back then, I told myself she was tired, overwhelmed, doing her best. I admired her, honestly. She was the first to start a family. I was just the little sister who still had time, still had energy, still had room to help. So I kept helping and helping and helping. Over the years, that helping became an expectation. Hannah would barely ask. She'd inform, "Hey, you're free next Saturday, right? We've got a wedding to go to." There was no question mark anymore. I'd cancel plans, miss birthday dinners, even skip a concert once. Tickets I'd bought months in advance because her babysitter fell through and she didn't trust anyone else with her kids. I remember sitting on her couch that night, the faint sound of music from the stadium downtown echoing through the open window, while her kids slept upstairs and my friend sent me videos of the show I'd missed. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that this is what family does. But I didn't realize that sometimes family is just the word people use to make you feel guilty for saying no. So when she called 2 weeks ago, the same cheerful tone, the same assumption, I didn't think much of it at first. "Hey, could you watch the kids next weekend? Mark and I really need a break. We've been so stressed lately." Something in me snapped before I could stop it. I said, "No," just that. A simple single word. But the silence that followed felt heavier than anything I'd ever said. "Wait, what do you mean no?" She laughed like she thought I was joking. "I mean, I can't," I said quietly. "I have plans." "Plans?" She echoed, her voice sharp. "What plans?" "You never have plans." That one stung. Not because it wasn't true, but because she knew why it was true. I never had plans because I was always waiting for her to need me. I told her it wasn't personal, that I just needed a weekend for myself, that I was tired. But she didn't want to hear it. Her tone changed. First disbelief, then anger. "Wow, I didn't realize spending time with your niece and nephew was such a burden." Then, the kicker. "You know, family helps family, but I guess that doesn't mean much to you anymore." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My hands were shaking. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, heart pounding like I'd done something terrible. The guilt came fast, that familiar ache in my chest, like I'd let everyone down. I texted my mom later that night, hoping for some reassurance. But instead, I got more of the same. "Your sister said you refused to help with the kids. That's not like you, sweetheart. Is everything okay? You know she's been under a lot of stress." And there it was, the invisible weight of responsibility, sliding right back onto my shoulders. I didn't reply. I just lay there in the dark, thinking about all the times I'd said yes, all the moments I'd given up for the sake of keeping the peace. And for what? Not gratitude, not love, just expectation. That night, I realized something that both hurt and freed me at the same time, that sometimes the people who preach family helps family only mean it when you're the one doing the helping. For the first time in years, I went to bed with my phone on silent, no guilt-ridden texts, no emergency calls, just quiet. But I didn't know that saying no once, just once, would change everything, because within days, the whispers started. My mom stopped calling as much. My dad made some pointed comments during dinner about selfish young people these days, and Hannah, she didn't text, not even once. At first, I thought it would blow over, that maybe they'd finally realize I wasn't their built-in babysitter. But I was wrong. The storm hadn't passed. It was just gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to hit. And when it did, I finally saw just how much my family really valued me. I didn't hear from Hannah for a few days after that call. No texts, no calls, no, "Hey, can we talk?" Nothing. At first, it was a relief. I thought maybe she'd cooled off. Maybe she'd realized I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just tired. But when Sunday rolled around, I got my answer. Not from her, but from my mom. She called right before lunch, her voice carrying that soft, practiced guilt I'd grown up around. "Honey, I heard things got tense with your sister." I sighed, pressing my palm against my forehead. "Mom, I just said I couldn't babysit this weekend. That's all." "I understand," she said, drawing out the word understand in a way that clearly meant she didn't. "But you know how hard things have been for Hannah. 2 kids, full-time job, Mark always working late." I cut her off before she could build her case. "Mom, she's not the only one who's tired. I work too. I have a life." There was a pause. Then came the inevitable line, the one that always ended these talks. Family helps family. The way she said it, it wasn't a statement. It was a command. I closed my eyes and took a breath, but it didn't stop the anger rising in my chest. "Does family ever help me?" I asked quietly. Silence. That was the thing about my family. They didn't argue, they just withdrew. If you didn't play your role, you were left standing alone in the cold. I thought I was imagining it at first, but over the next week, I felt it in everything. The way texts went unanswered, the way group chat messages scrolled past mine without reply, the way even my dad avoided eye contact when I stopped by their house. It was like I'd broken some invisible rule, and maybe I had, because my entire life, my role had been the helper, the one who never said no, the one who kept the peace. And now that I'd changed the script, nobody seemed to know how to handle it. A few days later, I ran into Hannah at the grocery store. She was at the checkout line, hair pulled up, sunglasses hiding half her face. She saw me before I could duck away, and that forced smile appeared, the kind that hides resentment under politeness. "Oh, hey," I nodded back. "Hey." She scanned the items on the belt. Wine, snacks, a new magazine. Nothing that screamed stressful weekend with the kids. "Where are the little ones?" I asked casually. "With Mark's mom," she said, avoiding my eyes. "She offered to help out this weekend." Something about the way she said offered felt rehearsed. I forced a smile. That's nice. Yeah, she said quickly. At least some people understand what family means. And there it was, the dagger. Sharp, subtle, public enough that I couldn't respond without looking petty. I just nodded and walked away, my stomach twisting with anger and disbelief. But as I was leaving the store, something caught my eye. A small card on the counter by the exit. A resort brochure. The same one Hannah had mentioned once in passing. A spa weekend 2 towns over. Out of curiosity, I glanced at the date printed on the flyer. That weekend. The one she'd begged me to babysit for. My heart sank. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe she and Mark had canceled. Maybe it was just bad timing. But that night, scrolling through social media, there it was. A photo. Hannah, smiling with a cocktail in hand, sitting by a pool. Caption, much needed weekend getaway. Self-care, mom-life balance. The comments flooded with hearts and compliments. You deserve this. So happy for you, girl. Hope the kids are okay. And I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling my stomach twist tighter with every scroll. She hadn't been overwhelmed. She hadn't been desperate or burnt out. She just wanted a break, and she knew exactly how to get one, by using me. For a moment, I wasn't even angry, just numb. Like all those years of bending over backward suddenly collapsed into one cold, heavy truth. I wasn't her sister anymore. I was her convenience. The next day, my mom texted again. Your sister said she had a great weekend. See what happens when we all help each other out? Help each other out. I laughed, out loud, alone in my kitchen. The sound didn't even feel like mine. They really didn't see it, did they? They didn't see how every favor chipped away at me, how every guilt trip carved out a little more of who I was. That night, I wrote a message in my notes app. I didn't send it, but I needed to get it out. It said, if family helps family, then why do I always feel used, not loved? I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because what was the point? They wouldn't understand anyway. Still, something shifted in me after that night. The guilt was still there, faint, like a bruise, but underneath it was something new, something steadier. Anger, yes, but also clarity. For once, I started to see that saying no wasn't selfish. It was survival, and deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because in families like mine, when you stop playing the role they've written for you, they'll do everything they can to drag you back into it. And Hannah, she wasn't done yet. I wish I could say I let it go after that. That I scrolled past her photos, closed the app, and moved on. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because no matter how much I tried to convince myself it wasn't worth it, that it was just one weekend, that photo stayed stuck in my head. Her wide smile, the cocktail, the caption, much needed weekend getaway. It echoed in my mind like a taunt. A week later, my mom invited me over for dinner. I almost didn't go, but part of me still hoped we could talk, clear the air. Maybe they'd realize how unfair they'd been. Maybe they'd understand that I wasn't trying to cause drama. I just wanted balance. When I arrived, the house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. Familiar, comforting, home. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt the tension, that invisible stiffness that creeps into the room when everyone's pretending nothing's wrong. My dad barely looked up from the TV. My mom hugged me, tight but distracted, her smile just a little too forced. And then Hannah walked in from the kitchen, holding a glass of wine, her expression unreadable. Oh, she said, as if she hadn't expected me. You came? I nodded. Mom invited me. Right, she murmured, setting her glass down. Didn't think you'd have time. I swallowed hard, my jaw tightening. I made time. My mom jumped in, her voice sweet and brittle. Girls, please, let's just have dinner, okay? No more fighting. But the thing about pretending nothing's wrong is, it doesn't make the tension go away. It just makes it quieter, sharper. We sat at the table, passing plates, making small talk that felt like walking barefoot on glass. And then halfway through the meal, my dad sighed. You know, it really broke your mother's heart hearing you refuse to help your sister, he said, not looking at me. My fork froze midair. I didn't refuse to help. Dad, I just said no. Hannah cut in. Same thing. I set my fork down slowly. No, it's not the same thing. Saying no once doesn't erase all the times I said yes. Hannah leaned back, crossing her arms. You think you're the only one who's tired? I've got 2 kids, a full-time job, a husband who's never home. Yeah, I snapped. And a spa weekend you lied about to everyone. The table went still. My mom's eyes widened. My dad looked up, frowning. Hannah blinked. What? I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the photo. The one I'd saved. You said you needed me because you were stressed and had no help. But you were lounging by a pool with a cocktail. For a second, she said nothing. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Then her eyes narrowed. You're stalking my social media now? Don't twist this, Hannah, I said, my voice trembling. You lied. You manipulated me. Oh, come on, she scoffed. I just needed a break. You act like I committed a crime. My mom reached out, her voice soft but pleading. Honey, please don't fight. We're family. I looked at her. Really looked. The way her brows furrowed. The way her lips quivered with worry. But I realized something then. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about the peace. Because peace in our family had always meant keeping Hannah comfortable. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. I'm not doing this anymore, I said quietly. I'm done being the bad guy for having boundaries. Boundaries? Hannah repeated, laughing bitterly. You mean selfishness? My dad's voice cut through the air, firm. That's enough, both of you. He looked at me, disappointment etched across his face. You've changed, you know that? Ever since you moved out, you've been distant. My throat tightened. Maybe because being close means being used. That silence again. Thick. Suffocating. Hannah rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You've always loved playing the victim. I stood there staring at her, realizing I'd never win, not because I was wrong, but because they'd already decided who I was. In their story, I was the ungrateful sister, the selfish daughter, the one who forgot what family means. So I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left, my heart pounding, my eyes burning, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by silence. No texts, no calls, no one checking if I made it home safe. And in that silence, I felt something break, not painfully, but cleanly, like a rope snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I'd spent years thinking my worth came from how much I gave. That love meant saying yes even when it hurt. But maybe love, real love, doesn't demand exhaustion. Maybe it respects boundaries. Maybe it understands no. I didn't know it then, but that night was the beginning of something. The unraveling of everything I thought I knew about family. Because what happened next would prove that my saying no didn't just hurt their pride. It exposed their entire idea of love. And once that happened, there was no going back. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. It was the kind that rings in your ears, the kind that feels like being erased. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from my mom or dad, maybe a simple, "Hey, can we talk?" But nothing came. The family group chat that used to buzz every day fell silent for me. I'd see messages, dinner plans, little jokes, but my name was never tagged. My messages never answered. It was strange, really. I used to think I was part of this tight-knit family, the kind that called each other constantly. But now, watching from the outside, it felt like I was realizing for the first time it was only tight-knit when I was the one holding it together. Work became my escape. I'd stay late at the office, pretending to be busy, anything to avoid coming home to the silence. Still, the guilt sat heavy on me, creeping into my thoughts every night before bed. Was I too harsh? Should I have just said yes and one last time? I replayed that dinner over and over, Hannah's words echoing in my head. "You've always loved playing the victim." I hated how much it got to me, because deep down, a part of me still wanted her approval, still wanted to be seen as the good sister. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos, birthdays, family dinners, me holding her kids on my lap, smiling like I didn't have a care in the world. But looking closer, I saw it. The tired eyes, the forced smiles. In almost every picture, I wasn't celebrating with them. I was taking care of them, babysitting, cleaning, cooking, filling in the gaps no one else wanted to. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't family. I was a resource. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dim glow of my living room, the city lights flickering through the blinds. For the first time, I let myself cry. Not because they'd hurt me, but because I'd let them for years. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "We're having dinner Sunday. Everyone's coming. You should be there." No, please. No question mark. Just a statement. An order disguised as an invitation. I stared at it for a while before typing back, "I'll think about it." Within minutes, she replied, "Don't make things harder than they already are." And there it was again, the guilt grenade, thrown so casually, like it was second nature. I didn't respond. Instead, I put my phone face down and went out for a walk. The air was cool, the streetlights humming faintly as I walked past quiet houses. That's when I saw them, a young couple on their porch. She was sitting with her legs tucked under a blanket, her husband gently rocking their baby in his arms. They were laughing about something small, something ordinary, and I felt this sudden ache in my chest. Not envy, not even sadness, just a quiet realization. That was the kind of family I wanted one day. One built on care, not obligation, on choice, not guilt. And I knew then, if I kept letting my own family drain me dry, I'd never have the energy to build something different. That night, I decided I wouldn't go to dinner. Not out of spite, but out of peace. I didn't owe them another explanation. I didn't owe them another version of myself that bled for their comfort. Sunday came, and I stayed home. I ordered takeout, watched a movie, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for enjoying it. But later that night, my phone lit up with a call from my mom. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something inside me, habit, maybe, made me pick up. "Hello?" Her voice was tight. "You really didn't come." Do you know how embarrassing that was? Everyone asked where you were. I stayed silent. "Your sister was so upset. She said you've completely changed. That she doesn't even recognize you anymore." "I guess that's true," I said softly. "I don't recognize myself either, but maybe that's a good thing." "Honey," she sighed. "This isn't like you." "No, Mom," I said, a small, tired laugh escaping. "It's exactly like me. You just never noticed because I was too busy being what everyone needed." She didn't respond. The silence on the line stretched long. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "You sound angry." "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "I'm just done." She started to say something else, but I ended the call before she could. I sat there afterward, phone still in my hand, feeling both lighter and lonelier than I'd felt in years. It was strange that freedom could feel so much like grief, because it wasn't just about saying no to babysitting. It was about saying no to the version of me they'd built, the agreeable one, the one who never fought back. And once you stop playing that part, you don't just lose their approval. You lose the illusion that they ever saw you clearly in the first place. But what I didn't know, sitting there in that fragile piece, was that this story wasn't over. Because sometimes, when you stop playing the role others wrote for you, they start rewriting it without you. And soon, I'd find out that Hannah had been doing exactly that, painting me as the villain to everyone who'd listen. The real storm was only just beginning. The next week was surreal. I felt like I was living in a parallel world where everyone I loved suddenly decided I was a stranger. It started with little things. A message from my cousin. "Hey, Hannah told us you refused to help again." "Are you serious?" I blinked at my phone. Refused again? She was twisting the story already. Then came the family group chat. The tone was gentle on the surface, but the implication was clear. I had become the villain. They spoke around me, about me, painting me as selfish, uncaring, cold. My every action was being dissected, my every word reinterpreted. And Hannah, she didn't even try to reach me. Not to explain, not to apologize, not even to defend herself. She had simply vanished behind the narrative she'd spun. It hurt more than I expected, because I knew the truth. I knew I wasn't the one at fault. But suddenly, hearing everyone I cared about out repeat the same accusations, a part of me started to wonder, had I really become selfish? I spent the nights pacing my apartment, my thoughts spiraling. I thought about every time I'd said yes, every time I'd given up my nights, my weekends, my plans, every time I'd been used and told it was for the family. And I realized something. It wasn't just that they expected me to help. It was that they relied on me. They had built their lives around the certainty that I would always be the one to say yes. And now that I didn't, the foundation was cracking, and they needed someone to blame. So they blamed me. One evening, I ran into a mutual friend of ours who wasn't involved in the drama. She looked at me with surprise and concern. "Jade, I didn't know. Your family said you refused to help again. Is everything okay?" I felt my chest tighten. "It's fine," I lied. I can't be everything for everyone anymore." She nodded slowly, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. And that hurt, because even people who didn't know the full story were starting to question me. By midweek, the tension had become unbearable. I hadn't spoken to Hannah in days, and every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, expecting another guilt-laden message. But the silence was even worse. It felt like my family had locked me out of their lives. Then came the final straw. My mom called, her voice tight and controlled. "Hannah's very upset. She's been crying. She feels abandoned by you. You've really hurt her, you know that?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, she's not abandoned. She's fine. She had a weekend getaway, didn't she?" There was a long pause. Then a quiet, shaky voice. "Jade, I don't understand. Why would you?" I let out a laugh, bitter, tired, incredulous. "Mom, she lied. She wasn't stressed. She didn't need me. She wanted a free weekend, and she assumed I'd say yes, as always." The silence on the line was deafening. "That can't be true," she whispered. "It is true. I saw it. I know it." I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief, because finally I could say it out loud. Rage, because for years, my sacrifices had been assumed, taken for granted, manipulated. I didn't know it then, but this was the moment I started taking my power back. The next day, I confronted Hannah, face to face. No phones, no texts, no intermediaries. She smirked when I walked in. "Oh, so you're finally ready to lecture me?" "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm here to set the record straight." Her smirk faltered. "Record? You mean your version of the story?" "Yes, my version," I said. "For years, I've said yes to everything. I've canceled plans, rearranged my life, missed opportunities, all so you could have an easy weekend. And now you've spent days making me out to be the villain for finally saying no. And I'm done. That's it." Her eyes widened, a flash of something like guilt or maybe fear crossing her face. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You wanted a free weekend, and you assumed I'd say yes. You lied, and you tried to manipulate everyone against me. That stops now." For a long moment, she said nothing. I could see the gears turning in her head, the sudden realization that I wasn't playing the role she had written for me anymore. And just like that, the power shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for understanding. I just stood there, breathing, calm, and unapologetic. And in that moment, I finally felt free. After that confrontation, something shifted in the air. It wasn't immediate, but the tension I'd carried for weeks, months really, began to loosen. Hannah didn't argue anymore. She didn't try to twist my words or gaslight me into guilt. Instead, there was a pause, a crack in the wall she'd built between us, and for the first time, I saw her hesitate. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub her nose in it. I simply let her see me, calm, composed, unwavering. That evening, I went home and sat on my couch, the weight of the last few weeks slowly settling into perspective. I thought about every time I had been manipulated, every weekend I'd given up, every sacrifice I'd made in the name of family. And then I smiled faintly, because for the first time, I realized something powerful. Saying no didn't make me the villain. It made me human. A few days later, the messages started trickling in. My cousins, friends, even distant relatives reached out, some curious, some apologetic. They'd heard fragments of the story, and the truth had started to seep through. But the real revelation came when a mutual friend, someone completely outside the family drama, called me. "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, Hannah told me she lied about being stressed this weekend. She said she just wanted a break and assumed you'd help like always. I thought you should know." I laughed quietly, leaning back against the couch. Relief, anger, validation, all at once. It was the betrayal I'd suspected, but had needed confirmed. The twist I'd been building toward in my own mind. She hadn't been overwhelmed. She hadn't needed help. She had used me, counting on my compliance, and had tried to rewrite the narrative to make herself look like the victim. And yet, I didn't feel rage like before. Not fully. Because by facing it, naming it, and standing my ground, I'd already reclaimed the part of me she had tried to steal. I thought about my parents too. They had been complicit, perhaps unknowingly, in the manipulation. They had expected me to play the role of caretaker indefinitely, and when I stopped, they were confused, hurt, maybe even a little proud of their daughter's assertiveness, so they didn't know how to express it yet. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel compassion for them, not to excuse their behavior, but to understand it. They were products of the same patterns, the same old scripts I had spent my life following, and as the week went on, I started setting boundaries more clearly. No last-minute babysitting requests, no guilt trips accepted, no apologies for taking care of myself first. It was uncomfortable at first. Old habits die hard, but slowly, the world began to shift around me. I noticed things I had ignored before. My own hobbies, my friends who valued me, moments of quiet that weren't punctuated by someone else's demands. Then came the final piece of the twist, karma in its subtle poetic form. A week later, I heard through the grapevine that Hannah had been late to an important event, a work presentation she had promised to attend, because she hadn't been able to find anyone to watch the kids at the last minute. She had assumed I would say yes. She had assumed I'd bend, and she hadn't. The news didn't give me joy. I didn't laugh or gloat, but I allowed myself a private moment of satisfaction, the kind kind that comes when reality quietly balances itself, when manipulations unravel without you having to lift a finger. I realized then that life has a way of teaching lessons, and sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones about ourselves. How long we allow others to take advantage, how often we confuse love with obligation, and how much strength it takes to reclaim our own voice. By the end of that month, I felt lighter. Not because my family had changed or because Hannah apologized, she didn't, but because I had. I had learned that boundaries are not betrayal. Saying no is not selfish, and protecting your own heart is the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and eventually for others. I still love my family. I still care about them, but I no longer measure my worth by how much I give away. And for the first time in years, when I thought about babysitting, about sacrificing my own plans, about saying yes simply to please someone else, I felt free because I knew finally that my life is mine to live, and no one, not even family, has the right to make me feel guilty for it.